Hello everyone, welcome to our video for the fourth day. This is our last video in our series of video lessons for level 4, reading strategies, think aloud. As usual, we have two objectives here. The first one, to understand how the think aloud strategy works, and number two, to model how effective reading is when thinking aloud. Okay, we always make the same recommendations. The first one, to pause the video at any time. It's a great idea to take notes, and finally, make sure you ask your teacher any questions about this lesson or any previous lessons before, okay? What I want you to visualize here in this chart is pretty much the type of processes our brain goes through when we read, right? So when we read, we make predictions, we visualize, we connect, we question, we clarify, and we evaluate, right? And all these processes are actually involved in this strategy I'm presented today, that is the strategy think aloud. Okay, you will be trying to figure out what might happen next. You are going to picture the people and places in the story. You will make connections. You will ask questions about what you're reading, right? You will investigate and even judge the stories or the characters involved, right? Let's try to make a little definition about what the think aloud strategy is. The think aloud strategy asks students to say out loud what they are thinking about when reading, solving math problems, or simply responding to questions posed by teachers or other students. Effective teachers think aloud on a regular basis to model this process for students, okay? So this strategy is pretty much concentrated into talking, into somehow making comments about what you're reading and trying to understand from your point of view what the story is about, right? Here on this slide, I can show you the three main steps we can follow when using this strategy. The first one, explain that reading is a process and it's a complex process, okay? The second, select a passage to read aloud that contains points that students might find difficult. Then from there, you can start developing some questions. And number three, verbalize your thoughts. While students read this passage silently, read it aloud. As you read, verbalize your thoughts, the questions you develop, and the process you use to solve comprehension problems. So this is how you take your students through the process. First, you model how to think aloud, and then you let your students do it on their own. Why is it necessary or useful to use this strategy when reading? The first one, because it helps students to learn to monitor their thinking. The second, it teaches students to reread a sentence and read ahead to clarify. And the third, because it slows down the reading process and allows students to monitor their understanding. Okay. Now, I want to show you a couple of phrases, a few sentences that you can actually use, to start using this strategy in your lessons, okay? To start asking your students things like, hey, so far I've learned, or this made me think of, that didn't make sense. I think that this will happen next. I reread this part because I was confused by, I think the most important part was, that's interesting because I wonder why I just thought of. So these are really good starters for class discussions. When you start reading your story and you make a pause, have students, let your students think. So make sure you give them enough time to share what they have in their heads, okay? Let's practice. There is a little passage that I want to share with you. This is kind of like a story, like I would say crime story maybe. And I want you to follow the process aloud with me, okay? I will be reading it aloud, so I'll give you some time for you to start wondering and asking the questions about what's going on behind the story. And the story starts. She found the gun just as she heard glass shattering downstairs. Why? She silently loaded and cooked it. As much as instinct told her to hide, she couldn't, not with Jordan and Casey's lives at stake. Who are these people in the story? She crouched down, surveying the first floor from the top step. The kitchen door was completely obliterated, and Todd lay sprawled out in his chest. Is Todd her husband, brother, best friend? It had to be Jeremy. He took the kids and now he was back to take her. This can't be happening, she repeated in her head over and over. She cracked. She couldn't take the tension any longer. What's happening? What do you think is going to happen next? What do you want from us? She screeched downstairs. Jen? She heard Officer John shout back. Well, this is a passage of a story. You may be wondering what happened before the story began here, what's going to happen next. You can start analyzing, a very short passage like this one with your students, and then analyze it in terms of what they are thinking. This really helps students to understand and increase their level of comprehension. Okay, then as usual, we have little questionnaires, video checking you complete after this video lesson. Here are some references in case you want to investigate a little bit more about think aloud. And this is the end. I hope you had found this lesson quite useful, and we'll see you next time. Bye.